Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for some more notes with Mrs. Wensley. All right. So today we are going to be looking at our 7.4 notes. Our 7.4 I can statements. I can understand that the sum of the angle measure of any quadrilateral is 360 degrees. I can find missing angle measures in quadrilaterals. And I can construct quadrilaterals. We're going to look at all of these things today. All right, first thing I want you to do, put your name at the top of your paper. Also put today's date, 4/10/18, and put your block number. Once you have done those things, I want you to make sure that you have one of your protractors. You guys should have one of those colored ones. I have this clear one, so I also have my ruler. But remember that on your protractor, the centimeter side is on the inside of your protractor. It's through the middle, that open part that you can stick your finger in. And the inches is along the bottom. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is, what does quadrilateral mean? Quad means four and lateral means sides. So quadrilateral means a polygon with four sides. So move on to these pictures right here. This chart right here means that all of these shapes are quadrilaterals. They all have four sides. We have a trapezoid, a kite, and a parallelogram. But other quadrilaterals that are also parallelograms are rectangles, rhombuses, and squares. Rectangles and rhombuses can also be squares, but are not always. But a square it does not go in reverse. So let's look at the definition of what makes up these quadrilaterals, since we are classifying quadrilaterals. A trapezoid is a quadrilateral with exactly one pair of parallel sides. One pair of parallel sides. If we go back up to the picture up here, those little arrows mean that those two sides are parallel. Kite. A kite is a quadrilateral with two pairs of congruent adjacent sides, and the opposite sides are not congruent. If we look up here, we have two pairs of congruent adjacent, meaning that they are next to each other, sides, but then these opposite sides, this one and this one, they are not the same length. This one and this one, they are not congruent. Flip your paper over. We are now going to be looking at the top of the next page. Double check and make sure your name is on the front page. If it's on the front page, put it on the front page and this page so that you remember. Now we're going to look at the definition of a parallelogram, or what classifies a parallelogram as such. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral with opposite sides that are congruent and parallel. Opposite sides that are congruent and parallel. A rectangle, which falls under the classification of a parallelogram, has it's a parallelogram with 4 right angles. A rhombus, which was more of that diamond shape that we saw. A rhombus has 4 congruent sides. So it's a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides. A square is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. So we're going to use our explanations up here, use what we just learned to classify these different quadrilaterals that we're looking at. When we classify quadrilaterals, we use the explanations above, what we just went over. We're going to look for the different quadrilaterals when trying to figure out what the shape is called. So, if we look here, this quadrilateral has 4 what? Think about it for a second. I'm going to give you a moment. Has 4 right angles. And oops, I wrote this backwards. 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. Same thing, opposite order. And I said I wrote it backwards just because I typed up the word angles right here. So we have 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides. If we look up here, 4 right angles and 4 congruent sides, we have a square. So this quadrilateral is a square. This quadrilateral down here, we see that these 2 sides are the same and these 2 sides are the same. They're adjacent and congruent. So this quadrilateral has 2 pairs of congruent, adjacent sides and opposite sides that are not congruent. Here and here, those are not the same. Oops, sorry. If we go across here and across here, they are not congruent. If you're having a hard time remembering what congruent or adjacent means, please go back and review those definitions in your previous notes. Based on this definition, this quadrilateral is a kite. Now I would like you to pause the video. If you haven't done so already, please pause the video and do these 3 on your own problems. All right, welcome back. We are now going to look at finding an angle measure of a quadrilateral. When we find an angle measure of a quadrilateral, what we need to do is we need to make sure that the measure of the angles inside the quadrilateral is equal to 360 degrees. 360 degrees, which means the 4 angles inside of your quadrilateral needs to equal 360. So if we look at this shape right here, we are looking for this angle measure. So I'm going to do 115 plus 70 plus 75 plus x. Just because it's not a number does not mean we shouldn't use it. We still need that variable to make it be all 4 angles, equals 360. Now I'm going to add these together. Well, 70 plus 115 is 185, plus 75 plus x equals 360. So now over here, off to the side, I'm going to do 185 plus 75. 5 and 5 is 10, 0, carry my 1, regroup my 1. 8 plus 7 plus 1 is 16. Regroup, 260. So now over here, 260 plus x. Do not drop your x. Don't lose your variable. It's important to hold it through all the way. Now all we're going to do is because this is positive, we're going to subtract it out. You know how to solve this. We went over these. You're going to subtract out that 260 to get the variable by itself. Oops. 360 minus 260, you should get x equals 100 degrees. The degree symbol is important because you are talking about an angle. Now we're going to look at constructing a quadrilateral. When constructing a quadrilateral, we need to start by drawing a line. Then line up the protractor and create the first angle on one side. Next, on the other side of the line, create the second angle. Then connect the 2 angles, completing the quadrilateral. I'm going to show you these steps. We're going to draw a parallelogram with a 60-degree angle and a 120-degree angle. So I'm going to start by taking that bottom edge of my protractor and just drawing a straight line. Draw your line. Now line up your protractor. Remember, the center is on the end. The 0 line, which is not the bottom, that 0 line is going to line up with the line that I just drew. And then I'm going to make a mark at 60 degrees because that's what it says up here. So I'm going to go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And I'm going to connect that to the corner. I'm going to mark this as my 60-degree angle. Now I'm going to go to the other end point, line up my protractor, put the center on the end, line up my line with the 0 line, not the end of my protractor, and I'm going to mark 120 degrees. I'm starting over here, so now I'm following the top. Here's 90, 100, 110, 120. I'm going to mark it, connect it, and label it. Now our final step is just, in order to make this a quadrilateral, is to connect those 2 lines. We now have a parallelogram with a 60-degree angle and a 120-degree angle. If we measure out the other angles, I want to know what these other 2 are going to be. Based on what you know of parallelogram, you should know what they're going to be. But I'm going to line it up and measure them just to make sure. So if we look right here, this one is 120 degrees. we line this one up over here. Put the center right at the middle there. This is 60 degrees. Now I'm going to add these together. I know 60 plus 60 is 120. So I'm going to do 120, 120, and 120. 2, 4, 6. 1, 2, 3. I get 360 degrees. My parallelogram equals 360 degrees. Go ahead and flip the paper over. Now is going to be the time to pause your video. This is going to be the on your own section. If there was any part that you did not understand that you want to go back and watch, please do so at this time. Pause the video and try the on your own section. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am now going to go over all of the on your own problems from today. This first one, we were asked to classify. We're just classifying the quadrilateral based on what we know. This first one, these tell me that I have 4 congruent sides. I'm going to look through what I have, and I see that the definition with 4 congruent sides is a rhombus. This shape right here is a rhombus. There's nothing else there. Notice I know that a square also has 4 congruent sides. But because of this word and, it means that it has to also have 4 right angles. Like this one up here. This one does not have 4 right angles, so it's a rhombus. This one right here. See that I have the 2 parallel sides? These 2 sides are congruent. 2 congruent sides, 2 parallel sides. Looking through my definitions, 1 pair of parallel sides. Exactly 1 pair of parallel sides. This shape right here is a trapezoid. All right, then if we look at this shape right here, we have opposite sides that are congruent and parallel. And we also have 4 right angles. Because we have opposite sides that are congruent and parallel and 4 right angles, in our definitions, we have a rectangle. Now, if we are finding the value of x, remember we're going to just add all of these together. So we're going to add up the angles and set them equal to 360. We have 100 plus 80 plus 100 plus x equals 360. 100 plus 100 is 200. 200 plus 80 plus x equals 360. 200 plus 80 is 280 plus x equals 360. Then we're going to subtract 280. 0 minus 0 is 0. Regroup the 3. Move a tens over here. 16 minus 8 is 8. 2 minus 2 is 0. So we get that x equals 80 degrees. Do the same thing for number 5. I know this box means it's a right angle and therefore it is 90 degrees. So I'm going to do 90 plus 81 plus 124 plus x equals 360. 90 plus 81 is 171 plus 124 plus x equals 360. 4 plus 1 is 5. 7, 8, 9. If you need to line this up and add it so that it's vertical and straight up and down and lined up, that's totally fine. I'm going to subtract out that 295. I'm going to regroup up here. Ten minus 5 is 5. 15 minus 9, 6. 2 minus 2 is 0. So I would get that x equals 65 degrees. I can look at this and say, well, I know that it is an acute angle, so this would make sense. Now this one, some of you may have had some trouble with, and that's okay. So we're going to draw a right trapezoid whose parallel sides have lengths of 3 centimeters and 5 centimeters. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a line along the bottom. I want this first line to be 5 centimeters. So you guys are going to take your centimeter line, which remember is on the inside of your protractor. I'm going to make this 5 centimeters. Then I'm going to draw a 90-degree angle because it is a right trapezoid, which means it has a 90-degree angle. Then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to make a top line of 3 centimeters. Line up my 3 with the line I just drew. And then I'm going to stop at the 0. Then I'm going to connect my 2 lines. This line is 5 centimeters. This line up here is 3 centimeters. And I have my right angle, and it is a trapezoid. It's a trapezoid because, if I look back at my definitions, I have exactly one pair of parallel sides. My parallel sides are my 3 centimeter and 5 centimeter line. Just because they are not the same length does not mean that they are not parallel. If you have any questions, please raise your hand at this time. I will be around to help you. Other than that, I hope that you understood this. And have a great day. It is time to move on.